All right, let's take a trip way back in time, long before any streaming service or pop star ever existed. We're going to find out how the entire foundation of Western music was built, not in some fancy recording studio, but inside the cold stone walls of medieval churches. No, really, just try to imagine that for a second. A world with zero recordings. If you wanted to hear a song, someone had to perform it, right there, live. And the second they stopped, the music was just gone. It only existed in your memory. Music was basically like smoke. It was beautiful, but you could never hold on to it. And you know, for most of human history, that's just how it was. Music was this temporary, unrepeatable moment. But there was one institution that had the power, the money, and honestly the motivation to grab that smoke and give it shape, to give it rules, to turn it into an art form that would echo for 1,000 years. And that institution? It was the church. So to really get how the church completely rewrote the rules of music, you have to realize just how powerful it was. I mean, back in medieval Europe, the church wasn't just a place you went on Sundays. It was the absolute center of everything. Life, politics, culture, you name it.
The church literally ran the show. They set the calendar, they were the biggest and richest customer for artists and architects, and, this is a big one, its monks and priests were often the only people around who knew how to read and write. Monasteries became these giant hard drives of knowledge, saving everything from science to history and, yep, especially music.
And here's the key thing to understand. Music inside a church had a very specific job. It wasn't there for you to dance to. It wasn't for your personal entertainment. It was a tool for worship. The whole point was to make the holy texts feel deeper, to lift people's spirits, and to create a sound that felt just as huge and awe-inspiring as the cathedrals themselves. So, to do this, the church created its first official musical style. It was designed to be serious, spiritual, and the same everywhere. It's called Gregorian chant, and it basically became the official soundtrack of the Middle Ages.
Okay, so Gregorian chant is all about this core idea called monophony. Let's break that down. Mono means one, and phony means sound. So one sound. It's just a single melody. No harmonies, no background instruments. Every single person in the choir sings the exact same tune all at the same time. And here's a great way to think about it. You know that powerful, unified sound you hear when thousands of voices all join together as one? That is the exact effect the monks were going for. A single, focused prayer rising up to the heavens.
So these chants were meant to be super calm and flowing. The rhythm wasn't about a catchy beat. It just followed the natural flow of the Latin words being sung. And it was all done a cappella, just human voices. Why? Well, because the voice was seen as the purest instrument there is, the one God himself created.
But okay, this whole system had a massive problem. How do you make sure that the monks in Spain are singing the exact same tune as the monks in England, if it's all just passed down by memory? You can't. You need a way to write it down. And this challenge led to one of the biggest breakthroughs in music history.
So that was the big puzzle they needed to crack. Just relying on memory wasn't going to work. Songs would change a little bit with every person who learned them. The church needed a standardized, unchangeable system. They basically had to invent a code for sound itself.
And the solution, well, it didn't just pop up overnight. At first, they used these little squiggles called neumes above the words to give a general hint of the melody's shape, like if it went up or down. But the real game changer? He was a monk named Guido of Arezzo, around the year 1000. He came up with the idea of using 4 horizontal lines to lock in the exact pitch of each note. This was it. This was the birth of sheet music. And just think about what that meant. This wasn't just a small step, it was a total revolution. It was the moment music could basically be teleported. It was like inventing email for music. A composer in Italy could now write down a tune, send the paper to France, and know for sure that the choir there would sing the exact notes he intended. So, the second music could be reliably written down. What do you think happened? Well, composers started to get creative. They started asking a really wild question. What if we don't all have to sing the exact same thing? What if we add layers? This idea would change music forever. This brand new, super complex style was called polyphony. You know, poly meaning many, so many sounds. Instead of one single melody, now you have a bunch of independent melodies all being sung at the same time, woven together to create these rich, incredible harmonies. So here's the easiest way to picture the difference. Monophony is like a solo performance, even if 1,000 people are singing it. Polyphony,
That's a team sport. It's the difference between one person singing alone and a whole band with a lead singer, backup singers, and a bass line all doing their own awesome thing.
And where did all this amazing new sound start to really take off? Well, you can probably guess. In the biggest, most important cultural hotspots of the time, like the legendary Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The giant, echoing spaces inside these buildings were the perfect laboratories for this glorious new music.
But it wasn't just the singing, The whole vibe of the cathedrals, the few instruments they did allow, the schools they ran, all of it played a huge part in what music was about to become.
You see, most instruments were considered, well, a little too worldly for church. But the massive pipe organ, it got a special pass. Its sound was just so powerful, so majestic, it was seen as worthy of praising God. It could hold these long, steady notes for the choir to sing against, and its deep tones would just fill every single corner of the cathedral. It was pure awe.
And this is wild. Music wasn't just considered art, it was straight-up science. It was one of the 7 liberal arts, the core curriculum for any educated person, right up there with geometry and astronomy. They saw music as a mathematical reflection of the perfect harmony of the universe.
So because music was this huge deal, the cathedrals basically became the first real music schools. They'd find talented boys for the choirs and give them an intense education in singing, theory, and writing music. These schools were, for all intents and purposes, the first music conservatories, churning out Europe's very first generation of professional musicians.
Okay, so fast forward 1,000 years. Why does any of this medieval stuff matter to us today? Well, because almost every single thing about the music you listen to, from pop songs to classical, has its roots right there, in the ideas cooked up inside those medieval churches.
Well, here's the crazy part. That musical staff you see in music class started in a monastery. The whole idea of harmony and chords that makes your favorite song sound so full and good, that began with polyphony in a cathedral. Even the basic do-re-mi scale we all learn, that was invented by our friend Guido of Arezzo to teach his singers. The DNA of medieval church music is absolutely everywhere.
So that leaves us with one last kind of fun question to think about. After 1,000 years of innovation, all built on their foundation, which of our modern sounds would be the most shocking, the most alien to them? The raw, screaming power of an electric guitar, or the totally artificial, out-of-this-world sounds of a synthesizer? It's a pretty wild thought, and it really shows you just how far music has come.